My name is Scarlett and I'm 22 years old. Just 6 months ago, I was a senior in college with a loving family who'd supported me through everything. At least that's what I thought. Then my cousin Jessica made a single false accusation that shattered my entire world. My parents, who'd promised to always be there for me, kicked me out, took away my college fund and gave it to her. Let me tell you how one lie destroyed the family I thought I knew. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're from. Please hit like and subscribe and stay with me, because trust me, this story isn't what you expect. I grew up in what I always considered a perfect family. My dad, James, is a respected pediatrician at the local hospital, and my mum, Martha, teaches 4th grade at the elementary school I once attended. They always emphasised the importance of education, hard work, and family. I have a younger sister, Amber, who's now 19. Though we're only 3 years apart, we couldn't be more different. She's artistic and spontaneous, while I've always been studious and organised. Despite our differences, we've always been close, sharing secrets and supporting each other through life's challenges. Our family home in suburban Boston is where most of my happiest memories were made. Sunday dinners were sacred in our household. We'd gather around the dining table, share stories about our week, and discuss our dreams for the future. During holidays, our house would transform into a festive wonderland. Mum would spend days preparing elaborate meals, and Dad would handle the decorations. Our traditions created a sense of stability and belonging that I cherished deeply. I worked hard throughout high school, earning a partial scholarship to a prestigious university in Massachusetts. While the scholarship covered about 60% of my tuition, my parents had been saving for my education since I was born. They established a college fund that would cover the remaining costs plus living expenses. Knowing they had my back financially gave me the freedom to focus on my studies rather than worrying about money. "We're so proud of you, Scarlett," my dad told me when I received my acceptance letter. "This fund is our investment in your future. We know you'll make the most of it." My parents' support wasn't just financial. They attended every academic competition, helped me study for difficult exams, and celebrated each achievement no matter how small. Their unwavering belief in me fueled my determination to succeed. Then there was my cousin Jessica, the 16-year-old daughter of my mum's younger sister Eleanor. The relationship between my mum and Aunt Eleanor had always been complicated. Growing up, they competed for their parents' attention, with my mother usually coming out on top. My mum became a teacher with a stable career and a loving family, while Eleanor struggled through 2 divorces and had difficulty holding down jobs. This created an undercurrent of resentment that affected our extended family dynamics. Jessica began spending weekends at our house when she was 14. At first, I enjoyed having her around. She was bright and seemed genuinely interested in my college experiences. I'd help her with homework, share stories about campus life, and offer advice about her future. We'd stay up late watching movies and talking about everything from books to boys. I saw her as the little sister. I never had someone who looked up to me and valued my guidance. "You're so lucky, Scarlett," Jessica once told me while lounging on my bed. "You have everything figured out. I wish I could be more like you." I was flattered by her admiration and didn't notice how her eyes lingered a bit too long on my possessions. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs of jealousy beneath her compliments. As Jessica's visits became more frequent, I began to notice subtle changes in her behavior. She'd ask to borrow my clothes, including expensive items I rarely wore myself. When I'd politely decline, her cheerful demeanor would instantly shift. "But why not?" "It's just sitting in your closet," she'd argue, her voice rising slightly. "You never wear it anyway." When I explained that some items held sentimental value or were gifts from special people, Jessica would become sullen sometimes, giving me the silent treatment for the remainder of her visit. During one particular weekend, Jessica asked to borrow my limited edition designer jacket that my boyfriend Ryan had given me for our anniversary. "I just want to wear it for this party next weekend," she pleaded. "I'll be super careful with it, I promise." "I'm sorry, Jessica, but that jacket is really special to me," I explained gently. Ryan saved up for months to buy it. I'd be devastated if anything happened to it. Jessica's face crumpled and tears immediately filled her eyes. She slammed my bedroom door and ran downstairs, where my parents were preparing dinner. Later, my mum pulled me aside. "Couldn't you have just let her borrow the jacket? It wouldn't have killed you to be generous, Scarlett." That was the first time I felt the subtle shift in my parents' perception of me. Suddenly, I was the selfish one for protecting something precious to me. It was also the first sign that Jessica had a talent for manipulation, that would eventually tear my life apart. The dynamics in our house began to change shortly after that jacket incident. Jessica started visiting more frequently, often arriving unannounced on Friday afternoons and staying until Sunday evening. My parents welcomed her with open arms, seemingly oblivious to how her presence affected me. One Saturday morning, I returned from my morning run to find my bedroom door ajar. I was certain I'd closed it before leaving. Inside my dresser drawers were slightly open, and items on my vanity had been rearranged. Nothing seemed to be missing, but the invasion of privacy unsettled me. When I mentioned it to Jessica, who was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone, she shrugged without looking up. "Maybe the cleaning lady went in there." "We don't have a cleaning lady," I replied, studying her reaction. Jessica finally looked up, her expression innocent. "Oh, well, maybe it was your mum then." The following weekend, I noticed my silver bracelet was missing. It wasn't particularly valuable, but my grandmother had given it to me before she passed away. I searched everywhere but couldn't find it. "Did you happen to see a silver bracelet in my room?" I asked Jessica during breakfast. "No," she answered quickly. "Why would I be looking through your stuff?" My mother, overhearing our conversation, sighed. "Scarlett, you're always losing things. I'm sure it'll turn up eventually." A few weeks later, Jessica asked to use my laptop to complete a school project. I was working on a term paper that was worth 30% of my grade, and I had all my research documents open. "I'm sorry, Jessica, but I'm in the middle of an important assignment," I explained. "You can use the family computer in the den." "But your laptop has better software," she protested. "I need Photoshop for this project, and the family computer doesn't have it." "I can help you install the free trial later, but right now I really need to finish this paper." Jessica's face darkened. She stomped out of my room, slamming the door so hard that the pictures on my wall rattled. Minutes later, I heard her sobbing dramatically in the guest room. That evening, my father knocked on my door. "Scarlett, Jessica is really upset. She says you refused to help her with her school project." "Dad, that's not exactly what happened. I was working on my term paper, and I couldn't let her use my laptop right then. I offered to help her install the software she needs on the family computer." My father frowned. "You know Jessica is going through a difficult time at home. Eleanor is working 2 jobs, and Jessica doesn't get much support with her schoolwork. Would it really have been so hard to take a break from your paper?" That night, I called Ryan to vent my frustrations. "I don't understand what's happening," I told him. "Suddenly, everything I do is wrong, and everything Jessica does is right." "Have you tried talking to your parents about how you feel?" Ryan suggested. I had, but my concerns were consistently dismissed. My mother pulled me aside after Sunday dinner and advised me to be more patient with Jessica. "She looks up to you, Scarlett. She's just a teenager going through normal adolescent struggles. You need to be the mature one." The situation escalated when Jessica began telling small lies about me to my family. She claimed I'd made fun of her clothes when we were alone, that I'd refused to help her with homework, and that I deliberately excluded her from conversations. "Scarlett told me I shouldn't bother applying to good colleges because I'm not smart enough," Jessica announced during a family dinner, her voice quivering. "What, I never said that," I protested, shocked by the blatant lie. My parents exchanged concerned glances. "Maybe you didn't mean it that way," my mother suggested gently, "but you need to be careful with your words. Jessica is sensitive." No matter how vehemently I denied these accusations, doubt had been planted in my family's minds. They began watching me more closely, interpreting my every interaction with Jessica through a lens of suspicion. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Even Amber started to distance herself from me, unsure who to believe. The only person who fully trusted me was Ryan, who had witnessed Jessica's manipulative behavior firsthand. "There's something not right about that girl," he told me after observing an interaction where Jessica's demeanor completely changed when my parents entered the room. "It's like she has 2 completely different personalities." When Jessica and I were alone, she dropped all pretenses. Her sweet, vulnerable facade disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. One evening, when everyone else was out of the house, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" she said, her voice eerily calm. "With your scholarships and your boyfriend and your perfect little life." "Jessica, what's going on? Why are you acting like this?" I asked, genuinely confused by her hostility. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You wouldn't understand. You've never had to struggle for anything." Before I could respond, we heard the front door open. Instantly, Jessica's expression transformed. Her eyes widened, her shoulders hunched, and she looked fragile and uncertain. "Thanks for the advice about the essay, Scarlett," she said loudly as my parents walked into the kitchen, her voice now timid and grateful. I stood there speechless, watching her performance with a growing sense of dread. Something was very wrong, and I had no idea how to prove it. As the months passed, the tension between Jessica and me evolved from uncomfortable to unbearable. She became increasingly bold in her intrusions into my personal space. What started as small boundary violations grew into something much more invasive. One afternoon, I returned early from class to find Jessica sitting on my bed scrolling through my unlocked phone. I had forgotten it while rushing to morning lectures. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, snatching my phone from her hands. Jessica didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "I was just looking for those photos from the lake house last summer. Aunt Martha said you might have them. You could have waited and asked me instead of going through my private messages," I said, quickly checking what she had been looking at. To my horror, she had been reading intimate texts between Ryan and me. "It's not a big deal," Jessica shrugged. "Cousins share stuff all the time." "No, Jessica, we don't. My phone is private, my room is private, and my relationship is private. You need to respect these boundaries." Her expression hardened. "You're so uptight. No wonder you don't have many friends." That comment stung because it contained a grain of truth. Between my rigorous academic schedule, part-time job, and relationship with Ryan, I hadn't maintained as many friendships as I might have liked. Jessica had clearly been observing me looking for vulnerabilities. Later that evening, I heard sobbing coming from the guest room. My parents were consoling Jessica, who was telling them a completely different version of our confrontation. "I just asked if I could see some family photos," she cried, and she exploded at me saying I was invading her privacy and that I wasn't really part of the family anyway. "I never said that," I protested from the doorway. She was going through my private messages with Ryan. My father stood up, his expression stern. "Scarlett, that's enough. Jessica would never do something like that. She knows better." "But she did." "Why would I lie about this?" My mother gave me a disappointed look. "Maybe you're under too much pressure with school. You haven't been yourself lately." The injustice of the situation made me want to scream. Instead, I walked away, retreating to my room where I called Ryan in tears. "They always believe her over me," I sobbed. "It's like I'm a stranger in my own home." The situation deteriorated further when Jessica began spreading rumors about me to extended family members. At a cousin's graduation party, I overheard my Aunt Lisa talking to my mother. "I heard Scarlett has been pretty hard on Jessica," Aunt Lisa said in a hushed voice. "Eleanor is worried about how Jessica dreads going to your house now." My mother looked troubled but didn't defend me. "We're working through some issues. Scarlett can be a bit territorial sometimes." After that party, Aunt Eleanor confronted me directly during a family dinner at our house. She waited until everyone was seated before launching her attack. "Scarlett, I want to know why you've been treating my daughter so poorly," she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut through all other conversation. "Jessica comes home in tears almost every time she visits." All eyes turned to me. My throat tightened with anxiety and indignation. "I haven't been treating her poorly," I managed to say. "There have been some misunderstandings, but Jessica hasn't been honest about what really happens when we're alone." "Are you calling my daughter a liar?" Aunt Eleanor's voice rose dangerously. "I'm saying there are two sides to this story, and no one seems interested in hearing mine." The dinner table divided into factions. My grandfather and Uncle Mark suggested that teenage girls often have conflicts and this would pass. Aunt Eleanor and my cousins from her side firmly believed Jessica was the victim. My parents sat uncomfortably in the middle, clearly distressed by the family discord, but unwilling to fully support me. Only Amber showed signs of doubt. She had witnessed some of Jessica's behavior changes when adults weren't looking. During a quiet moment after the disastrous dinner, she whispered to me, "I saw her practicing crying in the bathroom mirror last week. It was weird." That small validation meant everything to me. But Amber was too intimidated by our parents and the family drama to speak up publicly. The pressure began affecting every aspect of my life. My grades started slipping for the first time since freshman year. Dark circles formed under my eyes from lack of sleep. My part-time job at the campus bookstore, which I usually enjoyed, became another source of stress. Ryan remained my rock throughout this ordeal, but even he couldn't understand the depth of pain caused by my family's distrust. "They're your parents," he said. "Eventually, they'll see the truth." I wasn't so sure anymore. As the semester progressed, I found myself withdrawing from family activities to avoid Jessica. This only made me appear more guilty in my parents' eyes. The breaking point came when I returned home one weekend to find Jessica wearing my most prized possession, a cashmere sweater that had belonged to my grandmother. It was slightly too small for me now, but I kept it for sentimental reasons, safely stored in a special garment bag in the back of my closet. Jessica was lounging on the couch, casually wearing this treasured item as if it were any ordinary sweater. Even worse, she had spilled something on it, leaving a visible stain on the sleeve. In that moment, something inside me snapped. All the frustration, hurt, and injustice of the past months converged into a white-hot rage that I could no longer contain. Little did I know this confrontation would set the stage for Jessica's most devastating lie yet. It was the first weekend in November, and the air had turned crisp with the promise of winter. Jessica had arrived Friday evening for what would become the most catastrophic weekend of my life. I'd been dreading her visit, but my parents insisted I come home from my apartment near campus to work things out with my cousin. Saturday morning, I woke early and went for a run, hoping to clear my head before facing Jessica. When I returned, the house was quiet. My parents had gone to Amber's art exhibition, and I assumed Jessica was still asleep. I headed to my room to shower and change. The door to my closet was open. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. My special occasion section, where I kept my most expensive clothes, showed signs of disturbance. Hangers were spaced unevenly, and items were out of order. Then I noticed it was missing my designer leather jacket, the one Ryan had saved for months to buy me for our second anniversary. I found Jessica in the kitchen wearing my jacket while making herself breakfast. She had the sleeves rolled up and there was a smear of jam near the collar. "Take it off," I said quietly, my voice shaking with barely controlled anger. Jessica looked up, feigning innocence. "Oh, hi, I was just..." "Take it off now." I stepped closer, my hands clenched at my sides. "Why are you being so dramatic? It's just a jacket." She rolled her eyes, making no move to remove it. "It's not just a jacket, it's my jacket. The one I specifically told you never to touch. The one that Ryan saved for 6 months to buy me." Jessica shrugged deliberately, dripping more jam onto the sleeve. "Oops." Something inside me broke. "This isn't a game, Jessica. You've been manipulating my family, turning them against me, invading my privacy, and now ruining my things. What did I ever do to deserve this?" Jessica's expression changed, her eyes widening in mock fear. "Why are you yelling at me? You're scaring me." "Stop it. Stop with the act. No one else is here. It's just you and me, so drop the innocent victim routine." She stood up, suddenly knocking over her juice, which splashed across the counter and onto my jacket. I gasped, reaching for a towel, but Jessica blocked me. "Move," I demanded. "Or what?" She challenged, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Jessica, that jacket costs more than everything in your closet combined. If you don't take it off right now..." "You'll what? Hit me?" Her tone was taunting. "No, of course not. I would never hit you. But I want you out of my room and out of my things. Now." My voice had risen to a shout, my frustration finally boiling over after months of restraint. Jessica flinched theatrically, then ran from the kitchen up to the guest room, slamming the door loud enough for the neighbours to hear. I followed her upstairs, knocking on the door. "Jessica, I'm sorry for shouting, but we need to talk about boundaries." No response. "Jessica, please. This has gone on long enough. We're family. We should be able to work this out." Still nothing. Finally, I returned to my room, removed the stained jacket, and tried to clean it as best I could. The juice had already set into the delicate leather. Another memento ruined. That evening, my parents returned home, and Jessica emerged from the guest room, her eyes red and puffy. She avoided me throughout dinner, jumping whenever I moved and flinching if I reached across the table. My parents noticed, exchanging concerned glances. "Is everything okay?" my mother asked, looking between us. "Fine," Jessica mumbled, staring at her plate. "We had a disagreement earlier," I explained, trying to sound calm. Jessica took my leather jacket without permission and damaged it. Before my parents could respond, Jessica stood up abruptly. "I don't feel well. May I be excused?" My father nodded, his expression troubled. After Jessica left, he turned to me. "What really happened today, Scarlett?" I told them the truth, every detail of our confrontation. My mother listened silently, her brow furrowed. "Did you threaten her?" my father asked when I finished. "What? No, I was upset about the jacket, but I never threatened her." "She seemed genuinely frightened at dinner," my mother observed. "That's what she wants you to think," I replied, frustration creeping back into my voice. She's manipulating you like she has been for months. My parents exchanged another look, one that sent a chill down my spine. They didn't believe me. The next morning, Jessica was gone. She had left before dawn, leaving only a note on the guest room bed. I don't feel safe anymore. I've gone to Mia's house. Please don't call. Chaos erupted. My parents called Aunt Eleanor, who hadn't heard from Jessica. They called Jessica's friends, including Mia, but no one knew where she was. Hours passed in agonizing uncertainty before Jessica finally answered her phone. I can't come back there, she sobbed to my mother. Not with her in the house. My mother put the call on speaker so we could all hear. Jessica, honey, what happened? We need to know. What came next destroyed my world in 60 seconds flat. Scarlett has been hurting me, Jessica whispered, her voice breaking. Not just yesterday, for months. She says horrible things when you're not around. She tells me I'm worthless and stupid. Yesterday, she grabbed me and pushed me against the wall. She said if I ever touched her things again, she'd make me sorry. My jaw dropped. The accusations were so outlandish, so completely fabricated, that for a moment I couldn't even speak. That's a lie? I finally managed. I never touched her, Jessica continued, her voice gaining strength as she spun her tale. It's been getting worse. She threatens me every time I visit. I've been too scared to tell anyone because she said no one would believe me over her. Jessica, stop, I pleaded. This isn't true. None of it is true. I have bruises, Jessica countered, her voice suddenly small again. From where she grabbed me. Later that afternoon, Aunt Eleanor arrived at our house with Jessica. My cousin had a small bruise on her upper arm, a bruise I knew with absolute certainty I had not caused. She must have deliberately injured herself to support her story. In the living room, Jessica recounted her fabricated tale of abuse, while my aunt held her protectively. My parents listened, horror and disappointment etched on their faces. The more Jessica spoke, the more elaborate her lies became, describing a pattern of emotional and physical intimidation that had allegedly been going on for nearly a year. My father turned to me when Jessica finished, his expression more severe than I had ever seen it. Scarlett, these are very serious accusations. They're completely false, I stated firmly. I have never ever hurt Jessica. Not physically, not emotionally. If anything, she's been the one manipulating and hurting me. Aunt Eleanor stood up, trembling with rage. How dare you turn this around? My daughter has bruises, for God's sake. I don't know how she got those bruises, but it wasn't from me, I insisted. My father raised his hand for silence. Scarlett, I want you to be very honest right now. Did you threaten Jessica? Did you put your hands on her in anger? No, Dad, you've known me my entire life. Have I ever been violent? Have I ever hurt anyone? Instead of the immediate defense, I expected my father hesitated. That hesitation broke something fundamental between us. I think, he said finally, that you have two choices here. You can admit what happened, apologize to Jessica, and get help for your anger issues, or what? I whispered, though I already knew. Or you can't stay in this house anymore. The ultimatum hung in the air like a physical presence. My mother gasped softly, but didn't contradict him. You're asking me to admit to something I didn't do. I said, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the earthquake happening inside me. I won't lie, not even to make this easier. I never hurt Jessica. She's lying to you. My father stood up, his decision made. Then I need you to pack your things and leave by tomorrow afternoon. Just like that, 22 years of love and trust crumbled to dust. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of disbelief and heartbreak. I moved through my childhood bedroom like a ghost, mechanically packing clothes, books, and essentials into suitcases and boxes. Each item I touched held memories that now felt tainted. The teddy bear my father won for me at a carnival when I was 7. The handmade quilt my mother crafted for my 16th birthday. The collection of seashells from family vacations. My hands trembled as I folded my graduation gown, still hanging in my closet from the ceremony less than a year ago. My parents had been so proud that day, taking hundreds of photos and hosting a backyard party for family and friends. Now they couldn't even look me in the eye. Amber slipped into my room while our parents were downstairs with Aunt Eleanor discussing the situation. I don't believe her, Amber whispered, closing the door quietly behind her. Jessica, I mean. I've seen how she acts when adults aren't around. Relief washed over me at my sister's words. Thank you. That means everything right now. I should say something. Amber continued, her voice strained. Tell Mum and Dad what I've noticed. I saw the fear in her eyes, fear of becoming the next target of facing the same rejection I was experiencing. At 19, still financially dependent on our parents, Amber was in a vulnerable position. It's okay, I assured her, though it wasn't. This will all come out eventually. The truth has a way of surfacing. Where will you go? She asked, helping me fold a sweater. Ryan's offered to let me stay with him until I figure things out. My boyfriend had been horrified by my family's reaction and immediately offered his small one-bedroom apartment as refuge. We worked in silence for a while, the weight of impending separation hanging between us. As the older sister, I'd always protected Amber. Now I was leaving her alone in a house poisoned by Jessica's lies. Promise you'll stay in touch, Amber asked as we sealed the last box. Always. Nothing will change that. The next morning, Ryan arrived with his roommate's pickup truck. My father watched stonily from the porch as we loaded my belongings. My mother hovered in the doorway, clearly torn, but making no move to stop what was happening. Jessica and Aunt Eleanor had strategically returned to their home, having accomplished their mission of destroying my place in the family. As I placed the final box in the truck, my mother finally approached, pressing an envelope into my hand. It's not much, she whispered. Just enough to help you get settled somewhere. I opened the envelope later to find $500 a pittance, compared to the college fund they had promised would see me through graduation. Ryan's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in a building populated mostly by students. The space was barely 700 square feet with a galley kitchen and a living room that doubled as a dining area. Ryan cleared half his closet and dresser for my clothes, but most of my possessions remained in boxes stacked against the walls. It's temporary, he assured me, seeing my face as I surveyed our cramped quarters. We'll figure something out. The first few weeks were the hardest. News of my violent behavior spread through my extended family like wildfire. Cousins I'd grown up with stopped responding to my texts. Aunts and uncles who had given me birthday and Christmas gifts throughout my life now viewed me as some kind of monster. Only my grandmother called regularly, though even she seemed uncertain about what to believe. The emotional toll affected my academic performance dramatically. I missed deadlines, blanked during exams, and found it impossible to concentrate during lectures. My GPA, which had never dipped below 3.8, plummeted to a 2.7 by midterms. My academic advisor, Dr. Lewis, called me to his office after receiving alerts from several professors. Scarlett, what's going on? This isn't like you at all. The simple kindness in his voice broke the dam I'd built around my emotions. Through tears, I explained my situation, the false accusations, my parents' reaction, my current living circumstances, and my fear for the future. Dr. Lewis listened without judgment, offering tissues and occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he sat back with a troubled expression. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Have you reached out to campus counselling services? They can provide support during this difficult time. I hadn't, but I promised to make an appointment. What I didn't tell him was the crushing financial anxiety that now accompanied my emotional distress. 2 days later, I received the email that sent me spiraling into complete despair. It was from my father, coldly formal, as if addressing a stranger. Scarlett, your mother and I have made the difficult decision to reallocate your college fund. As you know, Jessica has been accepted to Westfield Academy for her junior and senior years of high school. This prestigious institution will provide her with the safe, supportive environment she needs after her traumatic experiences. The remaining balance of your college fund will be used to cover her tuition. We feel this is the appropriate course of action given the circumstances. We hope you understand that actions have consequences. I read the email 3 times, unable to process the magnitude of this betrayal. My college fund, nearly $35,000, that had been promised to me since childhood, was now going to Jessica. The money that would have covered my final year and a half of university was being handed to the person who had systematically destroyed my life. I showed the email to Ryan, who exploded with indignation. They can't do that. That money is yours. But legally they could. The account was in my parents' names, designated for educational purposes, but ultimately under their control. That night, I sat down with my laptop and calculated the harsh realities of my situation. Without the fund, I would need to take out substantial loans to complete my degree. Even with a full course load, I would need to work at least 30 hours per week to afford rent, food, and basic necessities. The campus counsellor I eventually met with was sympathetic but offered few practical solutions. "Have you considered taking a leave of absence?" she suggested. "Just until things stabilize." I couldn't bear the thought of delaying graduation. Despite everything, I was determined to complete my education on time. I picked up additional shifts at the bookstore and found a weekend job waiting tables at a local restaurant. Between both jobs and a full course load, I was working 70 hours per week, sleeping an average of 4 hours per night. My health deteriorated rapidly. I lost 15 pounds from my already slim frame. Dark circles became a permanent feature under my eyes. I caught every cold and virus that circulated on campus. Through it all, the question that haunted me was simple. Why had Jessica targeted me so viciously? What had I done to deserve this level of calculated malice? Some nights lying awake in Ryan's bed while he slept beside me, I began to doubt my own sanity. Could I have somehow done the things Jessica accused me of without remembering? Was I the villain in this story? These thoughts terrified me more than anything else. The idea that I might not know myself as well as I thought I did. The lowest point came in January during the harshest part of winter. I was working the closing shift at the restaurant when I saw them. My parents, Jessica and Amber, being seated in my section. They hadn't seen me yet, and for a moment I contemplated asking another server to take the table. But something in me refused to hide. Jessica saw me first. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She whispered something to my mother, who looked up with an expression of shock that quickly morphed into discomfort. I approached the table with my order pad, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. "Welcome to Marino's. Can I start you with some drinks?" My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother stared at her menu as if it contained the secrets of the universe. Only Amber looked at me directly, her expression a mixture of guilt and relief. "We'll find another table," my father said, abruptly standing up. "Sir, I'm afraid we're quite full tonight," my manager interjected, having approached when he noticed the tension. "There will be at least a 45-minute wait for another table." My father hesitated, then sat back down. "Fine. Water for everyone." I wrote down their order with a hand that somehow remained steady. As I turned to leave, Jessica spoke, her voice dripping with false concern. "It's so sad to see you working as a waitress, Scarlett. I guess college didn't work out." Before I could respond, Amber spoke up. "Actually, Scarlett is still maintaining a full course load while working 2 jobs, because someone took her college fund." The silence that followed was deafening. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. My mother suddenly found her napkin fascinating. I returned to the kitchen, handed their drink order to the bartender, and promptly had a panic attack in the walk-in freezer. One of the cooks found me there hyperventilating among the frozen French fries. That night after my shift, I sat on the edge of the bathtub in Ryan's apartment and considered dropping out of school. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the financial strain, the constant work, the destroyed relationships seemed impossible to bear. I was drowning and I couldn't see the surface anymore. But as I looked at my reflection in the small bathroom mirror, I saw something beyond the exhaustion and despair. I saw determination. I was not going to let Jessica's lies define my future. Somehow, some way, I would reclaim my life and my truth. What I didn't know then was that the path to vindication had already begun, through the quiet observations of people who were starting to see through Jessica's elaborate deception. February arrived with record-breaking cold and the first glimmer of hope in my seemingly hopeless situation. The turning point came during a required psychology course focusing on family dynamics. As Professor Amanda Hayes discussed patterns of manipulation within family systems, I found myself nodding along, recognizing the tactics Jessica had employed. After class, I lingered until the other students had left. "Professor Hayes, could I speak with you about something personal?" The professor, a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a straightforward manner, gestured to a chair beside her desk. "Of course, Scarlett. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, then decided to trust her with the truth. I explained my situation, the false accusations, my parents' reaction, and the ongoing consequences I was facing. Professor Hayes listened intently, occasionally making notes. "What you're describing," she said when I finished, "has all the hallmarks of psychological manipulation. Your cousin's behavior exhibits several concerning patterns: triangulation, gaslighting, and what we call impression management, presenting different faces to different audiences." Hearing a professional put names to Jessica's tactics validated what I had experienced. For months I had questioned my own perceptions and memories. Now someone was confirming that my reality was in fact real. The question is, Professor Hayes continued, what do you want to do about it? I want my family back, I said without hesitation, and I want Jessica to admit what she did. Then you need evidence. Start documenting everything, dates, times, specific incidents. If you have any text messages or emails that might support your side of the story, preserve them, and look for allies who might have witnessed your cousin's behaviour. That evening, I created a detailed timeline of events, starting from Jessica's first weekend visit through the present day. I noted every incident, every lie, every manipulation I could recall. The document quickly grew to 15 pages. Ryan read through my timeline, adding his own observations from the times he had interacted with Jessica. You know, he said thoughtfully, I think I still have some old text messages from Jessica on my phone. She texted me a few times last year asking about birthday gift ideas for you. He scrolled through his archive and suddenly stopped, his expression changing. Scarlett, you need to see this. Ryan handed me his phone. There, in a text exchange from August, Jessica had written, LOL, just made Scarlett look like the bad guy again. I'm getting so good at acting upset, you should have seen how mad she got. It's kind of fun watching her try to explain. My hands shook as I read the message. This was proof, tangible evidence, that Jessica was deliberately manipulating situations to make me look bad. Why didn't you show me this before? I asked. I never saw it, Ryan explained. She texted while I was studying for finals, and I must have read the first message about gift ideas and then forgotten to check the rest. I never opened these follow-up texts. This discovery energized me. If one piece of evidence existed, there might be more. I reached out to Amber, asking if she had noticed anything unusual about Jessica's behavior. Actually, Amber replied in a hushed phone call from her bedroom. I've been keeping notes. Jessica doesn't realize I can hear her when she's on the phone in the guest room. She's been bragging to her friend Mia about how she's the favorite now and how she's going to a better school thanks to your college fund. Amber, this is huge. Would you be willing to share what you've heard with Mum and Dad? There was a long pause. I'm scared, Scarlett. If they don't believe me, they might kick me out too. Her fear was justified, but she promised to think about it. In the meantime, she agreed to continue documenting Jessica's behaviour. A week later, Ryan discovered something even more damning. He had been scrolling through Instagram when he noticed a conversation in the comments section of one of Jessica's friends' posts. Remember when you said your cousin was crazy? Is that the one who got kicked out? A user named Tara had written. Jessica had responded, Yeah, lol, I told you my acting lessons would pay off. She never saw it coming. I stared at the exchange, equal parts vindicated and enraged. Jessica was publicly boasting about her deception. Ryan took screenshots before Jessica could delete the comments. With this new evidence, I felt confident enough to contact my cousin Tyler, who had always been close to Jessica. I explained my situation and asked if he had noticed anything unusual about her behaviour. To be honest, Tyler admitted, Jessica has been saying some weird stuff lately. At Christmas, she was showing off this expensive bracelet and told me it was from her college fund, aunt and uncle. When I asked what she meant, she laughed and said, Scarlett's not the only smart one in the family. I just found a better way to pay for school. Tyler agreed to provide a written statement about this conversation. Slowly, methodically, I was building a case. The breakthrough came in March, when Amber made a discovery that changed everything. While helping my mother clean the guest room after one of Jessica's visits, she found a small notebook wedged between the mattress and bed frame. Curious, she opened it and was shocked by what she found. Scarlett, it's a literal playbook, she told me during our weekly secret call. She has plans written out, ways to make you look bad, things to say to Mom and Dad, even notes about how to cry convincingly. There's a whole page titled Operation College Fund with steps for how to get your money. Can you get it to me? I asked, hardly daring to believe our luck. I already took photos of every page, Amber replied. I'm sending them now. And Scarlett, I'm ready to tell Mom and Dad what I know. This has gone too far. The photos Amber sent revealed the full extent of Jessica's calculated campaign against me. The notebook contained detailed strategies including cry whenever Scarlett corrects me, makes her look mean. Tell Aunt Martha that Scarlett mocks her cooking when she's not around. Act scared when Scarlett comes near me, plant idea that she's aggressive. Goal, get them to choose between me and her, make sure they pick me. Most disturbing was a page dated 2 weeks before the false abuse accusation, which read, Need something bigger to seal the deal, maybe physical evidence bruise. Would they believe she hit me, worth a tri-college fund at stake? Armed with this evidence, I contacted my great-uncle William, the family patriarch, whom everyone respected. Though in his 70s, Uncle William had a sharp mind and a strong sense of justice. I presented him with everything I had gathered, the timeline, the text messages, the social media comments, Tyler's statement, and the photos of Jessica's notebook. Uncle William was appalled. "This stops now," he declared after reviewing the materials. "I'm calling a family meeting at my house this Saturday. Everyone will attend, your parents, Eleanor, Jessica, you, and key family members who need to hear the truth. Bring all your evidence." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that justice might prevail. The morning of the family meeting dawned clear and cold. I dressed with care, choosing a professional-looking blouse and tailored pants, rather than the worn jeans and sweatshirts that had become my uniform since moving in with Ryan. I wanted to appear composed and credible, though my stomach churned with anxiety. "You've got this," Ryan encouraged, as he drove me to Uncle William's sprawling Victorian home in the suburbs. "The truth is on your side." "What if they still don't believe me?" I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. "Then we'll figure out our next steps together," he promised, squeezing my hand. "But Scarlett, your evidence is compelling. It's going to be hard for them to ignore." Uncle William greeted us at the door, his expression somber. "Everyone's in the living room," he said, patting my shoulder reassuringly. "I've asked that no one speak until both sides have presented their case." I entered the room clutching my folder of evidence. The atmosphere was tense, with family members, arranged in small clusters, speaking in hushed tones that ceased as I appeared. My parents sat stiffly on the sofa, not meeting my eyes. Aunt Eleanor perched beside them, her posture defensive. Jessica sat in an armchair, her expression a carefully constructed mask of apprehension. Amber, seated alone in a corner, gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. Tyler, his girlfriend, and 3 other cousins completed the gathering along with my grandmother, who looked distressed by the whole situation. Uncle William called the meeting to order, explaining its purpose and the rules he expected everyone to follow. "We're here today because serious accusations have been made and equally serious consequences have resulted," he began. "Before more damage is done to this family, we need to determine the truth. Scarlett has brought evidence she believes will exonerate her. She will present first without interruption. Then Jessica may respond also without interruption. After that, we'll open the floor for questions and discussion." I stepped forward, setting my materials on the coffee table. I had prepared for this moment, rehearsing my points to ensure I remained factual and unemotional. 6 months ago, I was accused of emotionally and physically abusing my cousin Jessica. I began my voice steadier than I felt. As a result, I was forced to leave my home, lost my college fund, and have been working 2 jobs while attending school full-time to survive. I'm here today because I never abused Jessica. In fact, the opposite is true. Jessica systematically manipulated my family as part of a calculated plan to discredit me and gain access to my college fund. I methodically presented my evidence, starting with the timeline of events, then sharing the text messages Ryan had discovered Tyler's statement about Jessica's boasting and the social media comments. I saved the most damning evidence for last, the photographs of Jessica's notebook, which I displayed on large poster boards so everyone could see her handwritten schemes. This notebook was found hidden in the guest room after one of Jessica's visits. I explained, pointing to the entry detailing her plan to fabricate physical abuse. As you can see, Jessica explicitly planned to falsely accuse me of violence to seal the deal on taking my college fund. The room was utterly silent. My father had gone pale while my mother pressed her hand to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Aunt Eleanor stared at the poster boards in disbelief. Jessica, however, maintained her composure. When Uncle William indicated it was her turn to speak, she stood and addressed the room with remarkable confidence. "I don't know what Scarlett is talking about," she said, her voice trembling slightly, a performance I now recognized all too well. "I never wrote in that notebook. She must have created it herself to frame me, and those text messages could easily be faked." She continued spinning an elaborate counter-narrative about my jealousy and instability, suggesting I had orchestrated this entire presentation out of resentment. As Jessica spoke, I watched my family members' reactions. Most appeared conflicted, glancing between Jessica's tearful denial and the evidence I had presented. The moment felt balanced on a knife's edge. Then Amber stood up. "I found the notebook," she stated clearly, her voice cutting through Jessica's performance. "It was wedged between the mattress and bed frame in the guest room after Jessica's last visit. I took the photos myself and sent them directly to Scarlett." Jessica's confident facade faltered. You're just taking her side because she's your sister. No, I'm telling the truth because I'm tired of the lies, Amber countered, gaining strength as she spoke. I've seen you practicing crying in the bathroom mirror. I've overheard you bragging to your friends about how you've manipulated everyone, and the night before you accused Scarlett of hurting you, I saw you pressing a hairbrush hard against your arm to create bruises. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Jessica's eyes darted around seeking support but found increasingly skeptical faces. That's ridiculous, she scoffed, but her voice had lost its conviction. Tyler spoke up next. Jessica, you told me yourself that you found a better way to pay for school. You were bragging about it. With her support crumbling, Jessica's demeanor transformed. The vulnerable victim vanished, replaced by defensive anger. So what if I did? She suddenly snapped, her mask falling away completely. Scarlett had everything handed to her. The perfect grades, the scholarship, the devoted boyfriend, the college fund. What about me? No one ever thought I was special enough to deserve those things. The room fell silent as Jessica's admission hung in the air. Aunt Eleanor looked stricken. My parents exchanged horrified glances. Jessica, my father said slowly, are you saying you deliberately falsely accused Scarlett of abuse? Jessica's composure cracked entirely. Tears, real ones this time, spilled down her cheeks. You all loved her more. Everyone always talked about how smart Scarlett is, how successful she'll be. No one ever saw me. But when I told you she hurt me, suddenly everyone cared about what happened to me. For once, I was the center of attention. My mother began to weep quietly. My father sat rigidly, his face ashen. Aunt Eleanor, recovering from her initial shock, moved to put an arm around Jessica. We need to get you help, honey. This isn't right. What about what she did to Scarlett? Amber demanded. Doesn't that matter? Uncle William raised his hand for silence. It all matters. Jessica clearly needs professional help to understand the severity and consequences of her actions. But right now, we also need to address the grave injustice done to Scarlett. My father stood up, his shoulders slumped with the weight of his mistake. He looked older than I had ever seen him, the lines in his face deepened by regret. Scarlett, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know if you can ever forgive us. We failed you completely. We should have believed you. We should have questioned Jessica's story. Instead, we turned our backs on our own daughter. My mother joined him, tears streaming down her face. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. Can you ever forgive us? I had imagined this moment for months, the vindication, the apologies. But now that it had arrived, my emotions were too complex for simple categorization. Relief, but also lingering hurt. Anger and an unexpected emptiness. I need time, I said honestly. What happened? It broke something fundamental between us. I can't just come home and pretend everything is fine. My parents nodded, understanding and accepting my boundaries. Your college fund will be restored immediately, my father assured me, with additional funds to compensate for your suffering. And of course, you're welcome to move back home whenever you're ready. Aunt Eleanor approached me next, her face lined with shame. I believed my daughter without question, and I encouraged others to do the same. I owe you a profound apology, Scarlett. One by one, family members who had doubted me came forward to apologize. Jessica, overwhelmed by the collapse of her deception, was quietly led from the room by Uncle William's wife, who had experience as a counselor. As the meeting concluded, I felt simultaneously lighter and heavier, freed from the burden of false accusations, but now carrying the knowledge that my family had been capable of such profound distrust. Ryan drove me back to his apartment in thoughtful silence. When we arrived, he finally spoke. What happens now? I took a deep breath, considering the path forward. Now I heal, I focus on graduation, and I rebuild myself first, then maybe my relationship with my family. The journey would not be easy, but for the first time in 6 months, I could see a future beyond survival. The truth had emerged as it eventually must, and with it came the possibility of recovery and renewal. The months following the family meeting brought significant changes to my life. My father transferred the college fund back into my name the very next day with an additional $15,000 as what he called inadequate restitution. This financial security allowed me to quit my waitressing job and reduce my bookstore hours, giving me the time I desperately needed to focus on my studies and my healing. I made the difficult decision not to move back into my parents' house immediately, Though they extended the invitation repeatedly, I wasn't emotionally ready for that level of reunion. The wounds were still too fresh, the memory of their disbelief too painful. Instead, Ryan and I found a slightly larger apartment closer to campus, giving us both more space and privacy. My relationship with my family entered a period of cautious reconstruction. We began with weekly dinners at a neutral restaurant territory that belonged to neither of us, where we could meet as equals rather than in the power dynamic of their home. These dinners were initially awkward, filled with careful conversation that avoided any mention of the past 6 months. "How are your classes going?" My mother would ask, her eyes seeking connection, but fearful of pushing too hard. "They're good. I'm on track to make the dean's list this semester." I'd reply, finding my way back to sharing my life with her one small detail at a time. My father struggled more visibly with guilt. He would often lapse into silence during our meals, watching me with an expression of profound regret. One evening, as we waited for our dessert, he reached across the table and gently placed his hand over mine. "I keep thinking about all the times I taught you to stand up for the truth," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "And then when it mattered most, I failed to listen to your truth. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for that." I didn't offer easy absolution, couldn't yet, but I acknowledged his pain. "We're both learning how to move forward, Dad." Amber and I grew closer than ever before. Her courage in standing up for me had strengthened our bond, transforming it from the casual closeness of siblings to the deep alliance of those who have weathered a crisis together. She began spending weekends at my new apartment, away from the lingering tension at home. "Mom keeps Jessica's photo on the mantel, but she's turned it face down," Amber reported during one of these visits. "I think it's her way of processing what happened." Jessica herself was conspicuously absent from family gatherings. After the revelation of her elaborate deception, Aunt Eleanor had enrolled her in an intensive therapy program, followed by a transfer to a boarding school, specializing in students with behavioral issues. The family spoke of her in hushed tones, as if her name itself might conjure another catastrophe. The process of healing wasn't linear. There were days when anger overwhelmed me in the shower driving to class, lying awake at night, the sense of injustice flooding back as fresh as the day I was told to leave my home. Other days brought unexpected grief for the unconditional trust I had once placed in my parents, a trust that could never be fully restored. Professor Hayes became an invaluable support during this period. She recommended books on family trauma and recovery, and sometimes simply provided her office as a quiet space where I could study or reflect without interruption. "What you've experienced is a form of betrayal trauma," she explained during one of our conversations. "The people you relied on most for safety and validation withdrew that support based on false information. That creates a wound that requires specific attention to heal." At her suggestion, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family estrangement and reconciliation. Dr. Winters helped me navigate the complex emotions of rebuilding relationships with people who had caused me significant harm, however unintentionally. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," she emphasized during one particularly difficult session. "And it doesn't have to happen on anyone's timeline, but your own. You can move forward with your family without erasing the hurt they caused." Gradually, I reclaimed my academic standing. My GPA recovered as I regained my ability to focus and engage with my studies. I reconnected with friends who had drifted away during my period of isolation, explaining as much of the situation as I felt comfortable sharing. By the time graduation approached, I had achieved a fragile equilibrium in my relationships with my parents. We weren't back to normal, would never be back to that particular normal, but we had established a new way of relating that acknowledged both our shared history and the rupture we had experienced. They attended my graduation ceremony, bursting with obvious pride, but also a visible restraint, aware that they no longer had the right to claim my achievements as reflections of their parenting. When I received my diploma, I looked out into the audience to see them standing, tears streaming down both their faces. At the small celebration afterward, my father raised a toast that acknowledged the elephant in the room. To Scarlett, whose determination and resilience carried her through circumstances no student should ever face. Your success today is entirely your own and all the more remarkable for it. In the year since graduation, I've built a life that feels authentically mine. I accepted a position with a non-profit organization that advocates for family reconciliation and support for young adults experiencing family estrangement. My own experience has given me insight and empathy that proves valuable in this work. Ryan and I are still together, our relationship strengthened by the crucible we weathered. He recently proposed, and we're planning a small wedding next spring. My parents will be invited, as will Amber and selected extended family members who stood by me or have since made genuine amends. Jessica and I have not spoken directly since the family meeting. Through Aunt Eleanor, I've heard that she continues with therapy and has shown improvement in recognizing and managing her manipulative tendencies. Part of me hopes she is finding her way to a healthier perspective, while another part maintains a cautious distance, protecting the peace I've worked so hard to establish. The most profound lesson I've learned through this ordeal is that truth, while it can be temporarily obscured, has an enduring power that fiction cannot match. Jessica's elaborate lies eventually collapsed under their own weight because they had no foundation in reality. My truth, though initially rejected, ultimately prevailed because it was consistent, coherent, and authentic. I've also learned about my own strength, a resilience I never knew I possessed until circumstances forced me to discover it. Being ejected from my family, losing financial security, and facing false accusations would have once seemed like insurmountable catastrophes. Having survived them, I now know that I can weather almost any storm. Perhaps most importantly, I've gained perspective on what matters in relationships. Trust isn't blind faith. It's a conditional investment that requires ongoing care and verification. Love that can be switched off in an instant was never unconditional to begin with. And forgiveness while healing doesn't require forgetting or returning to the vulnerable state that allowed harm to occur. If you're facing a similar situation, false accusations, family estrangement, or the painful process of rebuilding trust, please know that survival is possible. The path forward isn't about returning to what was, but about creating something new that honors your experience and protects your hard-won wisdom. The truth may be temporarily buried, but it cannot remain hidden forever. Stand firm in your reality, document what you know, and seek allies who can see beyond the smoke and mirrors of manipulation. Eventually, truth emerges, and with it comes the possibility of authentic healing. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find your way forward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support others finding this content. And remember, sharing these stories helps people feel less alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it brings some measure of comfort or guidance to those walking similar paths.